from Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, for the last generation, you had a choice.
The Republican candidate
I did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations
And
with
I
that woman.
realized that this is something
Miss
he is
Lewinsky.
We're not going to
inherent.
be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, good morning, Cleveland. Welcome to another edition of soon-to-be famous, world-famous Backfire Show with John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. Good morning.
Good morning. We're not world famous yet?
Well, maybe we are.
There's a little corner of Sri Lanka that doesn't get us.
Where they have bad Wi-Fi there.
Well, I hope everybody had a good week this week. A couple things. I see here where our sheriff is thinking about filing a lawsuit against the atheist group. The Jane Doe plaintiff was ID'd.
By the banner?
I don't know. It's got a name. All I know is I don't even see it right now, but it's got a name. But anyway, what would he be countersuing about?
Frankly, I don't understand that. We were talking about what possibilities are. Somebody said slander, but it's probably that's damage to your reputation typically, and this probably helped his reputation. So I don't know. I didn't really understand that. I saw the article that you referenced, but legally I couldn't figure out what he could sue her for.
Well, he said he's thinking about it, so I guess he's going to think some more. Yeah. And that's another good question. Thank you, Daniel. Who'd pay for that lawsuit?
Bradley County taxpayers.
Okay. I don't think the thing is worth suing. I don't think on either side.
Well, I mean, that's all that organization does. That's an organization out of Wisconsin that they're professional agitators, basically. And that's all they do is go around the country suing. And they really like suing small counties, small towns that don't have the resources and end up having to say, do we spend money fighting these people or do we give in to them? The problem is they're bullies. They're bullies and they're thugs. And that's the way they force you to do what they want. Very totalitarian nature to them.
Actually, there's probably one atheist out of, I don't know how many people, 100 maybe?
Well, I don't know that she's an atheist.
10,000? I don't know. It's a minority group, so I don't know. They're really upset about him having baptisms over there to jail, I think.
Well, I mean, to be honest, there's actually all kinds of studies that show that that's been a real improvement in the men and women's lives that are over there and has led a lot of them to give up drug habits, give up, lives of crime. But, God forbid we actually have something that helps the men and women over there.
Well, Franklin, what's your opinion of all this?
I'm less concerned about the baptisms in the jail because I think there's a voluntary component of that, the way the jail operates. I more see the point of using state resources on Facebook pages and so forth to promote ideas. I can see more of an issue there than I can with the other.
Let me ask you this. We've got all this bathroom controversy about use whatever bathroom you want to going on right now. What about prisons in the future?
Prisons.
Do we just have one prison and put male and female prisoners together?
Sure. There's no difference in a man and a woman, according to the president now.
Well, I'm not sure it would change the level of sexual activity.
So you're okay with it?
I didn't say I was okay with it. The point he seemed to be making is that somehow produces bad conduct in a prison, and I'm just suggesting there might not be much difference.
All right, well, let me ask you a question. Does a great big man have more opportunity to abuse a smaller man?
Presumably, John.
So the average woman in prison, if you put them all
John,
together, is she going? I understand, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to follow the president's logic.
I haven't heard any groundswell of support for the concept of degendering prisons.
Well, guess
that's
what? There
gotta
wasn't
come
a
next.
groundswell of support for degendering the bathrooms
I
either.
don't know about that.
Or the schools.
0.1%
Or the
of the
schools.
0.1% of the population. But this administration decided to cram it down every single citizen's throat.
Well,
So I'm glad you brought that
with
up.
all due respect, there seems to be a lot more support out there. in the country
0.1%
than
of the
that.
population.
A lot more support in the country than 0.1%.
So would you
in the
would
country.
you submit that to a nationwide referendum as to whether you want your little girl going in a bathroom with any man that decides to go? Here's another problem, Franklin. Where in the president's declaration does it specify how we decide who gets to go in the bathroom or not? Is there any definition that
No.
qualifies you as transgender?
Nope.
So, in other words, what he said was, Katie, bar the door. Anybody at any time can simply decide to walk into the women's bathroom and locker room facility, correct?
What it sounds like to me.
I don't know about the locker room facility. I hadn't heard that one
Well,
yet.
actually, that's included in most of this.
But in any event, John, I don't see much of an issue here, personally.
Well, we didn't have an issue at all until he brought it up.
Well, apparently, if you were transgender, you had an issue.
Oh.
0.1% of the population. 0.1%.
So one person's supposed to make it really difficult for the others.
Well, there's I think it was 148 women for every one transgendered person, man. So
Woman.
148 women
Woman.
are supposed to be made. Oh, by the way, Bruce Jenner is considering returning.
Are they
to a
all?
man.
Are they all uncomfortable about that?
I don't
John?
know, Franklin. Did
That's the
anybody
point.
ask them?
A lot of people.
Did
were
anybody
asked.
ask them?
Sure.
No, nobody asked them. It was crammed down their throats.
Okay, John.
There was no referendum. The president didn't solicit any comments on this. He simply made a bold declaration in support of his group that supports him.
Okay.
I mean, he's ordering the schools to do this or lose federal funds. Is that right? I mean, should that be allowed?
Well,
I think we ought to lock him up for even saying it.
Okay.
Where's his support coming from?
Where's his support coming from?
Yeah, where's Obama's support coming from for this?
Well, his approval ratings have been over 50% for the last 4 months.
I don't think so.
Well, that's what all the polls say.
Oh,
Don't ask me.
He's really high right now, John.
By the way, when he did this, they also slipped a mild other little change in that, because this has gotten so much attention, didn't get noticed. Department of Health and Human Services has now issued a final rule on Obamacare demanding that healthcare providers help individuals cover treatments for sex change operations and abortions. So that little tidbit was slid through. So now, folks, you will be paying through your premiums so that someone can have his sex change operation done.
I don't know anything about that one.
Because it slid through under the radar.
Well, you know,
Oh, and by the way, that
you know,
rule-
wait a minute. You know, here's the kind of thing we get off on here.
Okay.
All right. We'll talk about sliding things through, but we won't talk about the big things that get slid through. Like the $20 billion yesterday slid through by the Republican House.
For what?
$20 billion in military funding the Pentagon didn't ask for and didn't want. $20 billion.
Now that would be the Pentagon that
Who
is
didn't want
that is has now been purged of anybody that didn't toe the line. It is the military that is the smallest it's been in 100 years.
$20 billion.
Folks, if you think the
$20
world
billion
seems safer,
No, $20 billion to keep bases going, the Pentagon doesn't
right.
want.
Guess what, Franklin? Most people in the world don't think the world is safer. Irregardless
of that, John.
it is. We're the
It's a
smallest
question of-
military in the history of our country.
That's crap.
Since
John. That's
before
the
World
dumbest
War
thing you
One.
ever said.
Since before World War
You know
One.
that's not true.
Ask yourself, Franklin, do you think we need the smallest military we've had since World War One?
John, you know that's not even remotely true.
It is true.
It's not true.
It is true, Franklin. The Army, the Navy, they're all the smallest they've been since pre-World War One. Look it up. Feel free to Google it. I guarantee you. So, folks, if you think the world is so peaceful, which, by the way, the president gave a speech and said it was last week, the world was just so much more peaceful now after 8 years of him, and you think that we need a smaller military than we've had since pre-World War I, then by all means, be upset because the Republicans in Congress tried to maintain the size of our military.
There's a reason we have budget deficits, and it's the hypocritical Republican Party.
It's the entitlement plan. For example, glad you brought that up. The food stamps are at all-time highs, Franklin. If the economy's so good, and President Obama added all these millions, tens of millions of people to the food stamp rolls because he was helping them through the horrible economy, but he's now fixed that economy, why haven't those rolls come down?
Because the people at the very bottom of the chain haven't gotten the
No,
benefits
because
yet.
they took away the work requirements, and we now have 45 plus million people on food stamps. When he took over, there were around 18 million. Oh, here's another wonderful landmark. You'll appreciate this one, Franklin.
All right,
if
John.
all the wars continue through his term, he will be the longest serving wartime president in the history of the country.
That's right,
no
John.
Other president,
We spent 8 years
that's the man
trying
that
to
was going
clean
to get
up
us
the
out of
mess
wars.
you
Going
created.
to get us out of wars, and he's going to be the longest serving wartime
How
president
many
in
U.S.
history.
troops got killed in that period of time,
I
John?
don't know, Franklin. How many are going to get killed because he's having to send them back into the Iraq
many
mess
got
that
killed,
he
John?
created? That he created.
How many killed, John?
If he hadn't pulled out of Iraq,
How
we wouldn't
many?
be doing that.
Do you know or do you care? Which is it?
All right, now.
You
let's
come
be
in
nice.
here and you spew this crap out that has no basis in reality. It's a total fantasy that you pulled out of Fox News one morning.
Which
and
fantasy?
It has nothing to
that
do
the
with
Nobel
the real world
Prize
we
winning
live in.
president will be the longest serving wartime president in our
That's
country?
right, John, because we're still trying to deal with this mess y'all created.
You mean the mess that was fixed when he took it
No,
in Iraq?
John,
the mess
no,
that was fixed.
the mess-
Stable
no,
government,
John.
stable society, no killings, no murders to speak of.
No,
he
John.
has now turned that
The
into a
4,000
disaster.
American troops
A
that died
disaster.
for your lies, the 25,000 American troops that were maimed and crippled because of your lies, and the 500,000
Lies.
people who were
Oh, so
murdered.
now
because
you're
of it.
now you're concerned
So
with
don't
lies
tell
again.
me
So
that you have any legitimate basis for criticizing this president for anything.
let me ask you a question. Last week, you weren't bothered by the lies about boots on the ground, but now you're back to Bush lies. So Obama lies about boots on the ground because, like I said, I guess they're wearing
That's
bedroom
because
slippers.
Bush lies have put us in further debt, and we'll be paying for it for the next 50 years.
We'll pay for it for the next
Unlike
100
the
years
ones you're
if
talking about,
Clinton goes
which are
in and
going to
does our
save
tax
us what
plan.
money over time.
All right.
Longest wartime president in history. 7 countries he's authorized military actions in.
Fewer military
7
deaths.
countries. 7
right?
countries.
Right?
By the way, folks,
Or do you not care
I'm going to
about
give you
those
both the
body
time out
counts?
here now. Let's calm
Body
down.
counts don't count, apparently.
Let's get
well, if
back.
you want to talk body counts, let's talk about Hiroshima.
Let's go back to our
Let's do
original
talk
question.
about Hiroshima. What about it?
Well, let's
here
watch
we
and
go.
see whether the president slips in a "we're so sorry we used the atomic bomb on your
He's already
country."
said he wasn't going to do that, didn't
Oh,
he?
he said a lot of things. Ben Rhodes said a lot of things about the Iraq agreement, and then it turns out Ben Rhodes was lying and joking about manipulating the press.
If you believe the source of that story, who has been
Well, you know what, Franklin?
who has been saying since 2007 that what we really need to do is go to war in Iran and bomb them.
Guess what, Franklin? We could find that out
There's
if
a sor-
we
there's
could
a-
find that out if the most transparent administration in history would allow Ben Rhodes to testify before Congress, but they refused once again.
Well,
Or how about the top military lawyer, an avowed Republican working with the Benghazi committee, whose statements came out this week in the report, where he told the Pentagon, "I'm satisfied you guys did everything you could do, and there's no way you could have gotten people there to save those people. You made the right decisions."
who said this?
The Republican lawyer for the Benghazi committee,
Well, you know what, Franklin?
who's been there from the start.
I probably would.
You don't
take
wanna
the
talk
word-
about that,
No,
do you?
I would take the word of one of the men on the ground in Italy who said we were wrapped and ready to go, and we never got the orders to go. That's whose word I would take
Republican
over a
general,
lawyer. Yeah.
who's the advisor to Trey Gowdy in the Republican Benghazi committee, says all that.
What do you think come from?
What do you mean? Yeah. You know what came out of it?
What?
The Republican committee tried to withhold the transcripts of the statements. That's what happened.
You mean
Because y'all don't care about truth or
Franklin.
facts.
What truth? The truth is that 4 men died, and guess what? The Justice
right.
Department
That's
just
what I
announced
said.
they will not ask for the death penalty for the ass that killed those 4
And
men.
that's what
so
I
our
said.
Justice Department has already decided he doesn't get the death penalty after killing 4 of our service.
What happened? What happened?
That. Y'all care about getting Hillary.
No, let me ask you this. What happened to the deserter Clinton had a party for? I mean, Obama had a party for.
Sometime this summer is my recollection.
Do what?
My recollection is his
because
trial scheduled
One of
this
the
summer
military
sometime.
people went against the administration and pushed it through when the
Okay.
administration was trying to sweep that under the rug and cover it up.
As I recall, he has a trial scheduled this summer.
Well, what's happened to the 5 terrorists that we let loose, the mastermind terrorists we let loose? Oh, that's right.
Who are we
don't
talking
know.
about?
We don't know where they're at. We let them go for this traitor, and they're now back on the battlefield killing Americans in a country that if we hadn't pulled out of wouldn't be exploding right now.
All right, let's be nice. Let's go back to our original question.
What
This
was
is
it?
where all this came from. What's next? Are we going to put women prisoners and male prisoners together in one cell?
Who is suggesting that?
Who was suggesting the bathrooms before 6 months ago?
That's right. Who was suggesting the bathrooms?
Lots of people.
Nobody. 0.1% of the population. Nobody was clamoring for this. This is the LGBT feminazi groups that have an agenda that they are going to cram down the rest of our throats
let's
no matter
not
what.
forget how this got started.
Okay.
This got started because a Republican legislature in North Carolina decided they were going to tell a city in North Carolina what a city in North Carolina could or could not do.
The North Carolina law, actually, all it said was you can't order people to do it. You can't make them do it. That's all it said. So it actually protected people. It wasn't an attack on transgendered rights. It was saying in the public schools, we're not going to allow local ordinances to force them to do this. That's all it said. It didn't say that private companies couldn't do it on their own. It actually didn't say that the public schools couldn't do it. It said they couldn't be forced to do it. So the Republicans were advocating freedom of association, freedom of choice. It was the liberal progressives that were forcing people to do things.
Let's calm down just a little bit here. I'm going to change the subject. Last night in the elections, who ended up winning the elections last night? It was so close, I fell asleep.
Clinton narrowly won Kentucky, and Sanders won Oregon by a decent margin.
Okay. Where does that put those two candidates right now?
Exactly where they were.
It puts her significantly closer to clinching the nomination, and it means that he's got to win something like 85% of the
He's won
delegates.
21 states. It embarrasses her. She's going to be the nominee.
Okay,
But it's
maybe it is.
It's a
Maybe it is.
humiliating
He has-
embarrassment
he-
that she's at this point.
She's also
having
won.
to
She's
struggle.
also won 2.5 million more votes than him.
She's
so-
lost 21 states to him.
Okay.
And now we've got violence. By the way, that's a really good one. The Nevada convention had death threats, violence. Where were all the New York Times editorials about how the tenor of the Democratic Party was violent, like they did about the Trump rallies?
There's been a whole bunch of them.
No, there was no talk about how.
I've read about 10 articles.
You've read about the event. You're right. They have reported the event. But there's been no great lament that she and the Democrats or that Bernie was advocating violence or hadn't sufficiently dealt with their violence.
Actually, he was criticized
Only
pretty
by-
heavily for
only
not.
by the Clinton people.
What about?
No.
Are you talking about the riots out in Vegas?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I knew.
It's gotten nowhere near the coverage that rallies at Trump rallies got.
Do you agree with that, Franklin?
No. It's also the first time it's happened.
What do you-
Actually, it's not the first. It's the first time it turned physically violent.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Well, it's been
That's
there.
what the
the
that's what
confrontations
the,
have happened before.
That's what the criticism of the Trump campaign was about. The physical part of it.
You know, she won Kentucky,
Barely.
and during
Sure. There's a there's a cold country aspect there.
well, she was really strong in Kentucky. I mean, she won Kentucky big time over Obama.
Even after she was losing to Obama.
Yeah.
And you know, don't lose sight of the historical precedent. This is what was going on in the Democratic Party in 2008.
What's that?
She ran up until almost another couple of weeks in 2008, challenging Obama, and she was much closer to President Obama than Sanders is to her. That's just a fact.
And by the way, there's a huge rift in the Democratic Party right now between the labor unions and the environmental groups.
Tell me about it.
Well, they have signed, there's a bunch of environmentalists that have signed on with Tom Steyer. You know, he's one of those multi-million-dollar hedge fund managers that gave the most amount of money in the last cycle, but yet somehow the Koch brothers were the only people the media talked about. He actually gave, I think, like 5 times what the Koch brothers gave to the Democrats. But anyway, the labor unions are upset that his money is now going into some of these climate control movements, because most of the climate control movements damage labor union jobs. It's gotten bad enough that 500,000 member labor union Terry O'Sullivan has now sent a letter to the AFL-CIO accusing them of a politically bankrupt betrayal of union members. Now, this is a quote from the letter to the AFL-CIO by one of the member unions. We object to the political agenda of the AFL-CIO being sold to a job-killing hedge fund manager with a bag of cash. And the labor unions have been one of the main groups that have helped do the voter mobilization efforts of the Democrat Party. So this threatens Clinton's ability to mobilize the voters like Obama has been able to do.
It is certainly true that the Democratic Party is a big tent party with a lot of different factions in it, and they have to find some ways to find common ground where they can. And what John said is surely true. That's a real factor.
Most coal workers will have a hard time finding common ground with a candidate who says, we're going to put your companies and your jobs out of business. That's hard to find common ground with.
What's going on in Baltimore with the election results being decertified there? Anybody, y'all up on that?
I'm not familiar with that.
With the
What,
Democrats?
local elections or what?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't seen that.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of, there were some of the early contests. I believe Iowa, Bernie Sanders people were pretty adamant that they had actually been cheated out of real votes. Nevada, that's part of what happened in Nevada.
These are local and state elections they're talking about in
But it would have
according to
been
this article that he's talking about.
Well, I mean, it's still a problem in Baltimore.
Don't doubt it. I'm saying that's a...
Well, maybe if they, just as a lark, since, the last 50, 60 years it's been Democratic control in Baltimore, maybe if they elected some Republicans, they might change some of that.
Might keep everything straight.
But I mean, just because they've been in charge
Look,
for 50 or 60 years in Baltimore and Detroit and Chicago, and those are ultimate disasters in the country, don't read into that Democratic leadership leads to that.
The Republican Party's facing the same challenges that the Democratic Party is this year. And that obviously there are lots
Actually,
of
the
factions.
Republican Party, for all the talk, is probably at this point much more unified now than the Democrats.
Even John's
are
come
at all.
around. Even John's come around.
What do you think of Michael Gerson?
He's a liberal Republican.
A liberal Republican.
Yep,
Well,
he's a liberal
he
Republican.
says he considers himself a conservative.
Well, there's a lot of ways to determine that, and most people don't consider him that strong of a conservative Republican. He's not terrible.
Well, he has a nice editorial this morning where he's just talking about the fact that the Democratic and the Republican parties right now are kind of trying to deal with the different factions in their own parties in a way that they
That's
haven't
true.
had to do it in the past.
That's true. But my point simply is, for all of the lamenting of how horrible the Republican convention was going to be and the Republican race was going to be, the last 2 or 3 weeks, that's pretty much gone away. The convention, I don't know what a Trump convention from a spectacle standpoint will look like, but the Democrat convention, you've got actually right now, I'll read you one of the letters or some quotes from the letter that was sent by the Nevada Democratic Committee. They said, indeed, they're talking about the Bernie Sanders people. And he said, having seen up close the lack of conscience or concern for the ramifications of their actions, indeed, the glee with which they engaged in such destructive behavior, we expect similar tactics at the national convention in July. Now, that's the council for the Nevada Democratic Party. And it said, and they warned that the goal of many of these individuals sanctioned or encouraged by the Sanders campaign is not party building, but something more sinister and unproductive.
Do you think Hillary's getting desperate right now? Either one of you?
I think Hillary's lived desperate.
What's your opinion, Franklin?
I don't see any basis for thinking that.
Well,
why do you say that?
Well, she's coming out saying that she's going to help get her husband help.
I think that's
handle the financing.
I think that's
for the
always
country.
been part of the things that she suggested.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me read you a tweet. This is really, really concise from Dana Perino. So just so y'all know, folks, Hillary has now campaigning on the idea that she's going to put Bill Clinton in charge of the economy.
I think she's desperate.
She's going to put Bill Clinton. You're going to elect her
Why do you
president.
say that? Is my
Because
question.
she's having to refer back to her
Let me
husband
read
to
you
do her
this.
job.
This is from Dana
To do her
Perino.
job, the one she's running for.
Dana Perino says, bugging me. Hillary Rodham Clinton says Bill would run economy and jobs. So we're supposed to want to elect the first woman so her husband can head up the most important issue. So all you women out there being told that you should vote for her because it's going to be a historic first, vote for the first woman, she's turning the most important part of the job over to her husband, the man.
I think she's desperate right now because she's doing so bad. I mean, Bernie Sanders is giving her a fit.
Frankly, tell me how that's not insulting to women for her to say she's going to turn the most important part of her job over to the husband.
Well, the subsequent statements that came out talked about him
trying to clean that up.
No, talked about him working in particular areas of the country where the
let me ask you. Go ahead.
Where also he remains incredibly popular.
So the point is, she's not running for herself. Just what Steve said, she is so desperate, she'll say anything.
Oh, John, there is no precedent.
Well,
no, there's not a precedent for the spouse of a former president becoming a president. I think it's nonsensical to think that, at least unofficially, that person's not going to be, part of their kitchen cabinet, so to speak.
Unofficially and making an announcement that you're going to turn the most important part of the job over to him. By the way, Franklin, let's put it this way. What if Donald Trump had said, I think Hillary Rodham Clinton would have to turn the economy over to Bill because he's the only one that could do it? What kind of attacks would that elicit on him? How dare you insult a woman? You're implying that women can't
I don't
do
think
things.
she said I'd have to do anything.
She said she was going to.
Okay, that's her choice.
During a Kentucky campaign blitz Monday, Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton said her husband would be in charge of revitalizing the economy.
In charge.
He knows how to do it.
In charge, Franklin. Not help, not coordinate, in charge.
John, you're really getting desperate. If
No,
that's all you
she's
got.
really getting
That's all
desperate,
you
which is
got.
exactly what Steve's talking about.
24 hours later.
So, folks, if you really want to support a strong woman, make sure you vote for the woman who says she has to have her husband's help to do the important part of the job.
All I know is she remains ahead in the polls.
Barely.
She remains ahead in the polls.
On Bernie?
No.
He actually was leading her in
I think
Ohio.
just Bernie.
On Trump.
I don't think so on Trump
Oh,
anymore.
yes.
I
He
don't
was
think
leading
so.
her
I
in
think
Ohio.
Bernie.
yes.
They were
I think
statistically tied in Pennsylvania and Florida, all of which you have to win.
I would suggest that y'all worry more about the various members of the Republican Party who are actively working against Donald Trump.
I think they're coming around.
I don't see Bill Kristol coming around.
I think the ones that matter are coming around. Let's take a break.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Woot FM is your hometown oasis. WOOP LP Cleveland. Whoop Island. Radio 99.
Check into cash. The cash you need today is waiting for you at Check into Cash. It's your money, so come in and get it.
Get a payday advance today for up to $425. At Check into Cash, we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
The cash you need is right here, so stop worrying and stop in to Check into Cash today.
Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or buy today, the better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Yeah, you looking for something sweet? I know you are. Bring your little sweet self to the Village Bake Shop. Around since 1961, there ain't a baked good in the galaxy the Village Bake Shop can't whip up for you. So when you're ready to treat your mouth to a taste you won't soon forget, get over to the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center. Or give them a call at 476-5179. You dig?
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
From 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
Train engineers put our heating and cooling products for almost every test imaginable. So while you're sending your kids to school, they're sending 10,000 volts through a compressor. Testing like this is the reason Train is so reliable, and why our engineers prefer their steaks. Well done.
Ready to indulge in Train comfort? Call a Train comfort specialist at Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. High-quality service and installation for more than 30 years.
It's hard to stop a train. Really hard.
Call before May 31st and pay no service fee.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Woo FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
Well, let's just be calm and casual this second half of Backfire, guys. Y'all were a little high strung on the first half. I've got to ask a question.
John wouldn't give me a corn muffin.
Corn muffin.
I want to ask a question. What is NAFTA? NAFTA?
North American Free Trade Agreement.
Okay. What was Bill Clinton's role in that?
He
negotiated it.
It passed under his presidency.
What did it do?
It opened free trade between Mexico, America, and Canada.
So is that some of the problems we've got now?
That's a huge discussion.
Depends on who you're talking to.
Traditional conservatives don't think it is. They think that, the problem is you have to trade in the world. The question is, Steve, do you believe in isolationism? Now, to be honest, Trump and Clinton's position both are much more isolationist. Mm-hmm. They're both campaigning as being opposed to NAFTA.
Clinton is.
Mm-hmm. And Trump.
See,
did her husband not put it in place?
He did.
But now she's against it?
Well, she's demagoguing against it.
She's saying it needs to be tightened up and there need to be more protections. Well,
It's hard to, free trade is kind of free trade.
The fact is, when you do these kinds of agreements, there are always going to be winners and losers. There are some industries who have enjoyed protections over the years who are threatened by that. There are other industries who, because of markets opening up, do better. That's the debate.
Anyway, before I go any further, I want to get back, because we never really finished this conversation about Eric Watson and the lawsuit and all those things. Anyway, I want to take my hat off to Eric Watson and what he stands for over there. I think that's wonderful. I think he's probably helping a lot of people over there. I'm sorry that the atheists feel like they need to pick on a small sheriff in a town in Tennessee, but I think Cleveland, Tennessee will support Eric Watson. Any opinions there?
You know, that organization was established to do just this, to bully small towns.
To stir up crap and, you know, transgender stuff.
Well, to cram stuff down normal, regular Americans' throats. That's the progressive way.
It's amazing to me how a few people want to make all these large changes. I guess they think it'll make the world favor them more.
They're totalitarians at heart. They want to force you to do what they think you ought to be doing.
Real quick, the GOP blocks provision that would include the women in the draft. Opinions?
I think it's likely a mistake. I know the Republicans are divided on that. The Senate Republican version of the bill passed, approving it. The military has already passed rules that make it that female members of the military can do any job they can physically qualify for to perform. That's their rule right now. So I don't see any reason why selective service would be any different.
You know, I said the problem here is reality versus your personal beliefs. And Republicans were opposed to opening all of these military jobs up to women. And so from a purely logical standpoint, when the Democrats forced the issue because they said that they thought women had just as much right to be sent home in body bags as men from these conflicts, when they did that, then it was logical to say, if you're going to do that, then they ought to be subject to the draft just like the men are. I personally think it's bad enough to see anybody come home in a body bag. When we start seeing our daughters come home in body bags, people are going to say, how did that happen? Well, it happened because the liberal progressive Democratic Party forced this issue onto the military. You had the Marine Corps commandant is the last one that opposed the Obama administration on it, and they jerked his chain and pulled him into submission.
Here's what I think. We have an all-volunteer military force, and the only way we're ever going to have a draft is in the event of a true national emergency.
Well, folks, your daughters are going to, because of liberal progressive policies, your daughters are now going to be forced into the draft pool. And if we have that kind of event, they will be drafted and sent off to war just like the boys are. Now, if you're okay with that as a culture, you know, if that's our determination that we've now evolved to the point where we want that, then, you know, that's where we're at.
Well, I suppose you would have argued that women shouldn't have been allowed to join the military then. Is that right?
I argued that they shouldn't have been allowed into certain combat roles. Yes, absolutely.
Even if they were physically able to do it.
Well, first off, that's a question too, because the women that went through the
is that what you think?
Hang on just a second. The women that went through this Navy SEAL training, we now know that they bent the rules for them. They gave them 3 and 4 choices. A man washed out the first failure. We now know that they were given 3 and 4 tries. We know they were given training on the outside.
That's a separate question.
No, the point is, Franklin, the progressive social agenda was more important than the actual reality on the ground. And guess what that means, Franklin? A woman who's given extra chances and ends up actually in the Navy SEALs because of those extra chances, she's probably going to be one of the first ones that gets killed because she's not trained as well. She wasn't as qualified. So the problem is, your guys,
John,
it's so important to get your social outcome that you will bend the rules for them.
John, I didn't say anything about bending rules.
But they did bend the rules for them. That's the point.
Well, you go.
By the way,
you go tell all those women soldiers, they're not qualified.
Franklin, they either are or they're not.
That's
If
my
you're going to
point.
do it, then
That's my
don't bend the
point.
rules for them. And by the way, just on an aside, when the Navy opened up women's service onto the aircraft carriers, which is not as frontline combat, the pregnancy rate in the Navy went up 40%. And when a woman gets pregnant on an Air Force carrier, she has to be airlifted off. A new person has to be brought in and completely trained in that position. Costs us a fortune. But hey, political correctness is all the liberal progressives care about. 40% increase in the pregnancy rate in the Navy.
What'd you expect?
I expect people to do their duty. That's
And
what I
first
expect.
Gulf War,
And not let any sexual preference take place?
because men and women are equal.
I believe that people have a job to do, and there's nothing wrong with expecting them to do it.
All right, well, let me ask you this. How do you feel about the first helicopter pilot in the first Gulf War that got shot down, a woman helicopter pilot? First thing they did was pull her out in front of the male co-pilot and rape her in front of him to make him tell them what they wanted to know.
Okay. Did she come out afterwards and say we shouldn't have women in the military?
No, Franklin.
Of course not.
Of course she did.
So
Guess what? The man did, though. The man did. So, folks, not only will your daughters come home in body bags, they will be raped by the enemy soldiers. But, hey, it's important that we have our political correctness in the military.
All right, let's move on. Do you know anything more about Labor Secretary Thomas Perez and President Obama will announce a new rule Wednesday that will expand the number of workers eligible for overtime pay?
Yes. If you make less than, I may have this number slightly wrong, $42,600 or something like that.
$47,476.
$47,476. If you make less than that, your employer can't tell you, oh, we're just designating you as a supervisor, and you don't get overtime. That's what the rule is.
It's been criticized by small business owners, nonprofit groups, and universities that say some of they may have to switch some salaried workers to hourly positions to afford the threshold.
Sure.
Instead of seeing bigger paychecks, some of the salaried workers may be assigned fewer hours.
They'll get less money. It'll cost them money. These things don't happen in a vacuum.
They don't
cost
happen
money.
in a vacuum.
They
It's
cost
also
money, Franklin.
It's also happening because there are a number of employers who have abused.
Well, Franklin, the point here is
there's a lot of employees that like
meddles,
it, Franklin, so they can come and go when
There
they need
are
to.
some who do.
They're going to have to clock in and clock out now.
By the way,
They're going
folks,
to put more regulations in place. They don't have the flexibility to work the way they want to work anymore.
it will cost
And guess
the
who's behind
economy
it?
money, and it'll
Guess
cost
who's behind it?
individuals money. The
Guess-
unions.
Labor groups and unions.
By the way, those are the unions that as soon as they passed the $15 minimum wage in California, immediately applied for an exemption to the $15 minimum wage. The very guy that founded the $15 wage movement in California was a state union secretary, turned around and applied for an exemption for the union so they didn't have to pay it. Oh, and folks, when your child turns 16, don't send them to Wendy's for their first job, because 6,000 Wendy's operations have announced that they will be going to automated automated machines where you place your order. So all of those minimum wage positions
And of course,
are gonna be
nobody
eliminated.
thinks they were going to do that anyway.
They weren't, Franklin. They actually said we're doing it because of the increase of the minimum wage.
Sure, that's because it's giving them a convenient way to.
So once
to send
again,
that.
reality hits Franklin
No,
between the
nobody-
eyes, and he makes an excuse.
Nobody believes that they were.
Well,
gonna,
Franklin, who
they
said
were
it was
do
going to
that.
happen? We've been here for 4 years. Have I said that every time we've discussed minimum wage for 4 years?
Yes, John.
And magically,
Yes, John.
it's happening.
Yes, John. And all over America, there are all kinds of industries that are going to mechanization.
Yes, Franklin. Let me see if
And a lot of those are already paying
You're
more
right,
than
you're right,
$15 an
but
hour.
You're right, but let me see if I can explain this to you, Franklin. It's called managing your business. So if the minimum wage is $10 an hour, it costs too much to buy all those machines to replace that $10 an hour worker. So they don't replace them. When you kick the minimum wage up to 15, you've pushed it past the tipping point where it's more cost effective to buy the equipment, the capital outlay of the equipment. That's called economics.
John, you know what's going to happen next, though, don't you? They're going to start taxing the robots.
Oh, I'm sure.
They're going to have more cash.
Frankly, the point is, we said this all along.
John,
we said if you push the
John,
cost of labor
you
up,
are correct,
you will push
John,
labor
that
out
there's
of the
an
market.
economy involved. There is a market involved. No kidding. Duh.
Well, apparently
No,
you all
John,
can't
you
figure
say
that out.
this stuff like
Did I say
like
it was
it's
going to
this
happen?
grand
Did I say
insight
it was
that
going to
nobody
happen
knows.
years ago?
John.
And it's happening exactly like we said it was.
Yes, John. And what's been happening for the last 40
Tell me
years
what you say to the
has
kid
been
who loses
screwing
his
those
job.
people on
What
the bottom.
happens to the kid who loses his job to the machine? What do you say to them? Because you told them you were helping them by raising the minimum wage. You raised the minimum wage right out of a job. So what do you say to them, Franklin? What do you say to that kid who can't get a job now at the local Wendy's?
Here's your weed eater.
You say, too bad, but we got our social progressive policy in place.
Did anybody watch Megyn Kelly and Donald
I
Trump?
didn't see it.
Nope.
Neither one of you watched it?
What happened on it?
It was a very nice show.
He say I really don't want to see blood coming out of you, Megan. I only said that to be funny.
No, they had a real nice little powwow there. You know, I think
they?
Megan wanted to make up with him, and he was nice to her.
What did Megan do?
Megan didn't do anything to make up.
What did she do to him?
Well, anyway, she was being very nice, and he was being very nice, and it was nice and warm and cozy.
They sing Kumbaya. And
They did.
All
did.
things are good, huh?
They did. Anyway, there was a lot of people tuned into it. You didn't tune into it?
I did not.
Didn't want to see it?
I just, to be honest, didn't even pay any attention to it.
Donald Trump said,
did he say anything interesting?
yeah, I mean, he did. I can't remember everything. I was about half asleep. During it. Do what? No, I don't think he called her a great reporter. He may have. I don't know. But anyway, they're okay now. So I just want you to know, Donald must be a pretty good negotiator if he can make up with somebody like that.
Well, she, according to the stories I read, had been asking for 9 months for him to sit down for an interview with her.
Well, she finally got her way. Donald Trump made another comment. He would speak with North Korea's Kim Jong, whatever his name is.
Did you see the woman's obituary that's gone viral? Marianne Alfriend, faced with the prospect of voting for either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, Marianne Noland of Richmond chose instead to pass into eternal love of God on Sunday, May 15, 2016.
That was in an obituary?
That's I'm reading it. That's her obituary at the age of 68.
While you said
Bless her heart.
While you said that, interestingly enough, just the passage of time, there's one person identified presently in the world born before 1900.
I said the oldest lady died last week, right?
Yeah. Well, there's one other person they've identified who was born in July of 1899. So there's going to be no one left alive at that point.
Pretty amazing.
And the oldest,
living that old.
And the oldest, there is a one U.S. veteran who's 110 years old right now.
Should Donald Trump give his tax rate?
I think it's up to him whether he does it or not. He's making a calculated decision. I would say that on balance, it's better to deal with the criticism of not doing it than the criticism of what's in it. That's my guess.
Well, I mean, I don't think, I think we ask way too much of all of these people. And so part of me liked the answer, it's none of your business. It isn't any of your business.
I loved that. I thought that was good.
But here's the problem. They're going to dog him on that.
Oh, yeah.
But we've got the Clinton Foundation. They've got a new testimony has said that they have glaring mistakes that rise to the level of fraud, basically. This is a new report in the Wall Street Journal.
I mean, the foundation, the Clinton Foundation, is basically set up as a way for income.
There's multiple foundations.
How much does her daughter? How much does the daughter get to manage it?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
900.
And her husband, by the way, is a hedge fund manager. Chelsea's husband's a hedge fund manager. Made millions on that. But there's foundations under the foundation For example, there's one called the American India Foundation. Its nonprofit status was revoked in Illinois in 2002, and this year the charity is listed as not in good standing. In Massachusetts, that same foundation had its nonprofit status revoked in 2014. In March of 2015, they held a gala in an Atlanta hotel, even though they're not registered to raise funds in the state of Georgia. Now, the Clinton Global, Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation is having a glitzy annual conference in Atlanta next month, even though they're not registered in the state of Atlanta either.
Well, let me just say, for the record, I think the Clinton Foundation ought to release its tax returns. I think Donald Trump ought to release his tax returns.
Well, that was my point. If you're going to ask one, if you're going to dog on one of them, then certainly this ought to be released.
Okay.
I mean, that foundation, how much?
Well, over 1,000 foreign donors weren't disclosed. They've given to one donor.
These were foreign countries.
Right, foreign donors. Weren't disclosed, which by law they have to be. One of them had conducted business in Iran that was in violation of the U.S. sanctions. They've actually never, the Clinton Health Access Initiative has never handed over foreign donor information as they've promised. Now, they've said they would. They've never done it.
Well, Franklin, I'm glad you think that should be handed over. Do you think that should be handed over before the election?
Sure. I think Trump should also.
Okay.
And by the way, we also have a huge list of countries.
That's also the position that Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, and bunches of other Republicans have taken too. That's what ought to happen.
That they want Hillary to release that.
That Trump should release his also.
Okay, but
Hillary, I don't have any problem.
Keep Hillary into this.
Well, here's one of the differences.
I don't think we'll ever see this.
I already just said I
right,
think that
but there is a huge difference though. Donald Trump's a private individual, and everything he's doing and has done is private.
And he's been audited.
Clinton, there are actually a huge list of countries that had business before the State Department, made large contributions to the Clinton Global Initiative, and then had favorable decisions made on their behalf. The Colombia Free Trade Agreement, for example, they increased arms sales to countries that gave to their foundation. Abu Dhabi got trade agreements, arms deals, and screening station that would allow passengers to be cleared prior to entering the United States. So this is allowing people from an Arab nation into the United States. All of that was done, and that was by a country that paid Bill Clinton $1 million for 2 speeches on tourism and climate change. And those trips where he went and gave those $1 million speeches were arranged by Mrs. Clinton and the State Department staff. So the State Department actually arranged for Bill to go to Abu Dhabi, get $1 million to give 2 speeches, and then gave favorable treatment to Abu Dhabi in their relationship through the State Department.
Is there anything illegal about this?
Probably.
Well, Franklin, is there?
Well, first of all, if it happened the way John described it, although I suspect that the answer is a little different than that.
Well, how about the $2
First of all,
million?
Abu Dhabi, generally speaking, is considered something of an ally in the region.
Absolutely.
There. Number one. Number two, whenever an American president travels abroad, the State Department is involved in clearing that, working out the details.
So in other words, folks, don't look at the man behind the curtain.
No, I didn't say any such thing, John. You know, if you just quit putting words in my mouth. I didn't say you don't have any reason to ask questions. Feel free to ask the questions. I just said the answer is not as clear as you would make it.
Well, let me ask you for a clearer answer on the $2 million the foundation gave to a for-profit company run by a friend of Bill Clinton, which under federal law they're not allowed to do.
A female friend, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How
about that one,
a
Franklin?
female friend.
$2 million went to a for-profit company, which that in and of itself is illegal because they're not allowed to give money to for-profit companies.
It depends on what they were doing, John. And by that, I mean, for example, a nonprofit can hire a for-profit company to deliver services that you're doing for charities and other sorts of things.
Can they also give a 30% stake to a good-looking blonde who comes over to the house every time Hillary Clinton leaves the house?
John.
Can they do that?
Don't know.
Because that's who got the money.
Don't know.
$2 million was directed to a company that she was a 30% owner in, which apparently that 30% stake was more or less given to her before the foundation gave the $2 million.
Is there a list of money that is given to the Clinton Foundation, is that a public?
They've said they would release it, but they haven't.
So it's not public information.
No. They won't release it.
Do you see anything wrong with that, Franklin? With her running for the office she's running, with her serving the job that she serves.
I'm generally in favor
and the
of
money that's in the.
Let me answer the question.
Let me finish. And the money that's in the foundation and where it came from.
I'm generally in favor of transparency. Okay? Is there a legal requirement? No, not that I'm aware of. So is it illegal to not release that information? No, it's not. Well, much like the Trump tax returns, I suspect.
But he is a private citizen. That's a huge distinction.
Well, aren't corporations citizens according to the Supreme Court,
The
John?
point is, Franklin, that she was a public official while a lot of this was going on. And this was
John,
taxpayer money that she was doling out.
What did I just say? I'm in favor of releasing the information.
I understand.
The question is not releasing it illegal? The answer is, I don't think it's illegal. I don't think it's what they ought to do. I'm in favor of transparency.
By the way, did you all see where the Affordable Care Act has cost Blue Cross Blue Shield $170 million?
Did y'all see where the Affordable Care Act lowered the uninsured rate under 10% for the first time in American
I hope you're
history?
happy with that, because we've had 36.6% increase in January, and they're getting ready to ask for another double-digit increase. So we're paying for that, Franklin. All you people out there that saw your health care premiums go up, all you people out there, by the way, if you own stock in Blue Cross Blue Shield, you lost money too. So we're losing.
Oh, yeah, Blue Cross Blue Shield also said that they remain optimistic about the future.
Even after raising average premiums in the program by more than 60% over the last 2 years, they still lost money.
What they said is that when they did their initial premium estimates, that they underestimated just how sick the population actually was.
And so they had 60%.
And so it has cost more.
And to fix that, they had a 60% increase in their premiums and still lost more money. At what point does somebody look at this and go, this is a flop, a failure? Move out of it, change it, do something different. Oh, well, that's right. I don't know. It's too signaturally important to the president.
I'll tell you what, John. How about sometime in the last 7 years, the Republican Party fill its vow that we're going to bring forward our Obamacare replacement plan next year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year, and we've still never done it.
They brought forth all kinds of things, but guess what? We don't believe in overarching, overcomplicated, collapsing government bureaucracy.
John,
so yes, we brought forth solutions.
I have been listening to them say they were going to come forward with a plan for 7 years.
Who?
The Republican Party, Paul Ryan, John Boehner.
Who would they talk
Mitch
to about
McConnell.
it?
No.
Who would they talk to about it?
What do you mean, John?
What? The Democrats don't want to listen to anybody.
What does that have to do? What does that have to do with them coming forward with a plan?
Did they close the door?
Coming forward with an idea.
Did the Democrats close the door and put this deal together with no Republican help because they did not want it? Did they do that?
Certainly appears so.
Okay, why the hell didn't you all ask for some input then?
Yeah. We did ask for
input. You shut the door, Franklin. They actually literally locked the door.
Y'all forget the whole year that
they
went into
literally locked the door, Franklin.
The point is, why can't your party put its own plan
we
forward?
Did.
No, you haven't.
We're fixing to, Franklin.
We don't
That's
believe
what they said in 2008, in 09, in 10, in 11, in 12, in 13, in 14. Still hasn't happened.
Franklin, I promise you it's fixing to change. Okay? When this election's over with, you're going to see a lot. You're going to see some real change, baby.
Maybe the election would have been different last time if they'd actually done what they said they were going to do and come up with a plan.
Franklin,
they don't have one.
You're missing. If you'll let me.
No, what they've done is said, well, here's a few tweaks.
Yes, because we don't believe in bureaucracies. We don't believe in giant, expensive bureaucracies that are bloated and ineffective, which is what this is. It's the largest, most bloated bureaucracy we've ever created, and it's a failure.
Frankly, if you put it back the way it was, it'd be a better plan than we got now. If you just put
unless
it back
you're
the way
one
it
of the 19 million people who didn't
have
it,
tell them to go get a job.
There's still 30 million uninsured.
Tell them to go get a job. They'll get insurance. Bye-bye. We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and